Archit.
Nice to be here. Uh,
Awesome. We just wanted to know a little bit about your background, your academic journey, or what you've been doing for work, and why you decided to do your PhD.
I got interested in science at a very young age. So I would read science fiction books, and that kind of opened a pathway to curiosity of how something would work. And I come from a very superstitious culture. So that also invoked a sense of curiosity. Like, if you say, don't do this because of X, then what is the X here? Why do people believe you should do something a particular way or not? I initially got interested in physics, but then assessing my own strengths, I felt biology would be the right way to go. So I did my bachelor's and a master's in genetic engineering. So during that, I worked in very diverse lab settings. So I worked in computational biology, COVID testing facilities, on plants. Since all my experience was very spread out into different fields of biology, it was a bit hard to choose what I want to do my PhD in. That is one of the things which I liked about the universities in US, that we get to do rotations under multiple people and we can figure out which specialty do we want to delve into. Because after PhD, I don't think we get a lot of opportunities to work on stuff other apart from your PhD work. It takes a lot of time to transition into a different field. Choosing the right course was kind of important. Last year, I applied for admission cycle for fall 24. At that time, I did not know a lot about what the committee would want to see in an applicant, because the intake process in India is much different. It's not a very wholesome way to accept students, because mostly it depends upon marks and cutoffs. So it has a lot more of academics and less about who you are as a person. So I was a bit unprepared for the kind of questions they would ask
Mhm.
for a PhD application. I applied for 9 or 10 programs because I was unsure whether I was able to represent my interest and background in a particular way. That is one of the things where the Fearless Grad program was very helpful. In the videos classes which were recorded, it gave a kind of a purpose. Like if they're asking for a particular statement of purpose, for example, what do they really want to see? So how it has to be separate from what your experiences have been in the academic field, and they want to see more from the human perspective as well. So, which I thought was quite missing from my last year applications. Having a community of people who are doing the same thing or who have gone through this process is very helpful. Like in my circle, there are not. I don't know anyone who has started a PhD at that time. All of us had basically fragments of the whole picture, and
Yeah.
it's hard to combine to see where that would go. In that sense, the community was very helpful. People facing this similar problems would ask questions, and that would kind of give us more perspective on how to proceed with that.
Mhm. Awesome. You did your master's as well. Did you do that in
Yeah.
India? Did you send out a bunch of cold emails and then do a research project in the States?
Yes.
That's
So
so.
for my thesis project, I sent about 50, 60 cold emails and finally got one professor who was interested in taking me
That's so.
for one presentation, Purdue. And
Yeah.
that is the program where I accepted the offer from.
For your PhD. Look at that,
Yes.
full circle. What was like before you started working with us? What was like your frustration with this whole process? What motivated you to work with us?
During my experience with cold emailing, I noticed that I received very few responses. In 50, 60 emails, I might have received responses from three. So I kind of felt maybe either they are not opening my mails, so maybe I have written the subject too formally, or maybe in a spam kind of way that they would not want to open it. Or if they open it, it's very densely packed with information, so it does not look appealing to go through. and my resume was like 4 or 5 pages at that time. I went into detail about everything,
Okay.
extracurricular activities, and things which were not relevant to a PhD. That was the first factor which I thought I need to tackle. And that's where I felt the program would be very helpful at. Drafting professors would want to read is, I think, as much art as it is a science. After inculcating the tips, the things I learned at the program, I maybe sent out 20 emails and received replies from 8 or 9. So
Okay.
I had a much better response. I
Great.
interacted with a few people and to decide which program I would be a fit at. And they could sometimes redirect me to programs which are better suited for me as well.
They know
Mhm.
the space
Yeah.
and they want to help if they can, but it's like they only have limited time, so they're going to do as much
Mhm.
as they can for the people that the emails connect with. Versus, yeah, so that's
Yeah.
cool that you had a better relationship building and response rate, so it's not as frustrating when you get, like when people are responding to you, you're more motivated to keep going. But if it's
Yeah.
just crickets, I don't know what's working, and
Mhm.
then you're not as motivated. So I guess, would you describe maybe the most helpful thing or the biggest benefit through the program for you that you liked?
I think it was the community of people who have an idea of what is expected of us and how to see ourselves from a different perspective.
Mm,
So, my introduction was maybe like 30 seconds and did not really tell a whole lot about me. But seeing how others were introducing themselves gave me a lot of idea. Like,
mm,
okay, I have much more than what I am showing,
mm.
which kind of I'm not doing myself justice in the introduction. So there, I think a lot of small things like this add up to a really substantial difference.
Some people will ask me, like, well, what is it that's going to change for my application? Oh, it's probably going to be like 10 tiny things that really make a
Mhm.
difference, but it's hard. It's not like, oh, well, if we only fix your resume, you're golden, like a bunch
Yeah.
of little stuff. Because, yeah, obviously your resume got a big update too. So that's
Mhm.
helpful. So tell me now, like the application, how many places did you apply? Where did you get in? How did that go?
So I applied to 3 universities this time. I try to keep things more focused so that I could dedicate more time per application.
Hmm.
So I got interviews from 2 places,
Okay.
and from one of them, like I accepted at Purdue, and for the other one, I've given the interview, and probably they will let me know somewhere in mid of March, I think.
So you went from applying to 10 places to three and having a better outcome. A lot of people wouldn't expect that, but I think that
Mhm.
it works that way sometimes.
I remember asking that in the first few group calls, like, what is the ideal number of universities to apply to? If we apply to more places, we might find a university where we are a better fit, but it really doesn't come down to the number of applications at the end of the day.
Fit is super
Yeah.
important. Would you recommend the Fearless Grad program to others? And if so, why?
I definitely would, because since I went through all this without a support group behind, I kind of know how daunting it could be, especially for people who are not really familiar with the US grad application system. Instead of wasting tons of time finding information, it's good to have all of them compiled into a particular repository.
Mm,
Like most of the questions which I had during my first application cycle were already covered in modules. So I
mm,
could spend more time working on the intricacies in the resume, how to phrase things in a different way. So I
mm.
think channelizing energy into improvement rather than finding is much more productive. A lot of people sharing their ideas also helps give you a sense of calm or purpose. You don't really panic in situations.
You kind of have this like backstop, right? Like you can't slide all the way down. We're gonna go up and downs. Like I don't
Yeah.
think anybody gets through this process like perfectly, but you didn't panic when things were confusing or strange, and like
Uh-huh.
you got to keep going, and then you got to create great results. So what is your life like now that you're in, and what does that feel like?
I'm planning to, from my work, gonna take few months, spend it with family, and then probably getting ready for all the things I plan to do in PhD, looking
Yeah.
a bit more into the college, what all activities I could be involved in there. Gonna take it a bit easy.
That you get to take a little bit of, a pause to be with family and friends
Mhm.
before you move and start a whole new chapter. What was the most surprising thing, either about the process or that you like learned about yourself through everything, like the past like 12 months?
It was very surprising that people were the admissions committee do want to see you as humans. It's fine if we make mistakes. Like sometimes when they ask really good questions in interviews, I would stutter, and that would be okay. It won't be taken as something like you don't know or you're trying to come up with a weird ass answer or something. Instead of running away from making mistakes, being more conscious about them and working on correction rather than avoiding works pretty well.
That's
So a
really
lot of
smart.
stress we take doesn't really translate well into interviews. You
Yeah.
think we need to answer in a perfect responses
Mhm.
or else we won't be selected, which turns
Mhm.
out to not be true.
And that's going to serve you once you start your PhD, because the same thing, right? Like you're going to be tempted to be in rooms and pretend like you know the answer because you don't want to look stupid, but that's just going to backfire. So I think that's smart to kind of start that, your brain already thinking that way. Anything you would tell yourself a year ago as you were starting this, like what would you say?
Maybe don't worry too much about getting in and focus more on giving your best effort.
Oh,
And
that's
obviously, quality over quantity.
anything else you want to share with others who are starting the process or in the middle?
So I think it's a good idea to go through the planning stage of planning modules, having a rough timeline set for like it works well for me setting up deadlines, or
Mm,
else I would keep on procrastinating.
mm,
So I think earlier we started, it's much easier. When I started this year, I would send out 1 or 2 mails a week. And so in 4 to 10 weeks, I could have sent enough
mm,
emails instead of waiting for the last day to send
mm.
them all.
I remember you waiting and I was like, just send the first one. I think I was like,
Yeah.
send one. Like, don't worry about the other 10, but just get one out the door. Okay, well, thank you so much. Appreciate it.